Good evening, everyone. I am Rebecca Price with Nashville Public Library, and I want to welcome everyone here for tonight's Then and Now program, The History of Disabilities in Our Community, Living with Communication Impairments and Deaf Hard of Hearing. This series is presented by Vanderbilt University and hosted by Nashville Public Library Special Collections, which is home to two of Nashville's beloved community spaces, the Civil Rights Room and the Votes for Women's Room. We are honored to host this series and extend a very special thank you to Dr. McShepard Ray, principal of Martin Luther King Jr. High School, for hosting this program here tonight. And we are thankful to all of you here tonight, and we extend a gentle reminder to please be mindful that we are recording tonight's program. Yes, please. Before we begin tonight's program, let us be reminded that we occupy the ancestral and traditional lands of the Cherokee, Shawnee, Choctaw, Chickasaw, and Creek Nations. We are humbled and we honor all the ancestors of this land on which we meet today, from the elders who have gone before to the generations to come. We are now in our third season of Then and Now, where we have shared stories and built community with Nashville's diverse population, with a three-part series on Black Nashville, to immigrant communities from the Middle East, Africa, Asia, and Central and South America. As we continue our journey to learn more about our neighbors, we are now exploring and focusing on communities living with disabilities, whose stories are often overlooked or taken for granted. Tonight, we finish that three-part journey and welcome Nashville's community living with communication impairments and deaf hard of hearing. It is now my pleasure to introduce Vanderbilt's Dr. Andre Churchwell, with us tonight in his role as Senior Advisor to the Chancellor on Inclusion and Community Outreach.
Thank you, Rebecca. Couldn't do these programs without our partners in the National Public Library and the Special Collections sections and Special Projects section. They've been really, they've had just an inestimable value and help in terms of putting these programs together. I really thank them. Thank you for attending our 15th program. How about that? 15 in about 2.5 to 3 years in our Then and Now series, History of Minority Communities in Nashville. This year, we are focused on our communities with impairments and disabilities. Today, we're discussing our communities with communication impairments and those who are deaf or have hard or either hard of hearing. To give you a sense of the magnitude of these conditions and what these communities are grappling with, I pulled some data, some national data from the NIH and other associations. From the Speech, Language, and Hearing Association, it details that speech and language impairments affect 6 to 8 million people in this country, and aphasia affects over 2 million people of its various forms. 1% of the population stutters. As a matter of fact, I should raise my hand because as a child and a young adult, I stuttered, and only with great help and assistance from a coach was I able to basically overcome that. From the Hearing Loss Association of America, hearing-related data points out that 2 out of 3 of every 1,000 child born, they are born with some detectable hearing loss. More than 90% of deaf children are born to hearing parents. Age is the strongest predictor, I'm a cardiologist, I know that one, of hearing loss among adults, ages 20 to 69, with the greatest amount of hearing loss in the later ages, from 69 and higher. 50% of those aged 75 years or older have some hearing impairment that's been acquired. And those that are being 65 to 74, about a quarter, 1 out of 4 people, have some noticeable hearing impairment. And I think I'm on the road to that too, as a matter of fact, from sinusitis and tinnitus. So it is a very prevalent problem in the country, and it's something that we should talk about tonight for certain. So I'm thankful to have our historians and leaders who are here today who can address these two important national communities living with communication impairments and deaf and hard of hearing. We have a growing quilt of diversity in Nashville, and one large lesson I've learned in my years of cardiology practice and service is that each person's perspective adds richness and innovative ideas and practices from their unique perspectives. And you'll get a chance to sample some of that tonight. I'd like to welcome my co-partner and host, Samara Lee, but she can't be with us tonight. She has a terrible family problem that she's grappling with. So Samara is the head of Means of Conversation and is co-director of the Vanderbilt Project on Unity and American Democracy. We send our thoughts and prayers with her and to her. Before we move further in the program, I'd like to have a tape that our chancellor, our ninth chancellor at Vanderbilt, Dr. Daniel Diermeier, put together to talk about this year's activities around communities that have disabilities. If we can play that tape now. Thank you.
Good evening. It's my honor to welcome you to the final session of this year's Then and Now series, Vanderbilt University's collaboration with the Nashville Public Library, exploring the history of Nashville's minority communities. Thank you to Dr. Andrea Churchwell for the vision and leadership behind this program, and to our outstanding partners at the Nashville Public Library for helping bring it to life. Thank you to Martin Luther King Jr. Magnet High School for hosting our recent events, and to the distinguished speakers joining us tonight. Over the past 3 years, Then and Now has grown into a powerful forum for learning and connection. These gatherings have illuminated the stories of Nashville's many vibrant communities, their challenges, their achievements, and the countless ways their contributions have shaped the history of the city we share. They have enriched our understanding of our neighbors and forged new partnerships that will continue to create opportunity for all of Nashville's citizens as our city changes and grows. We've heard remarkable personal stories from individuals who thrive amid difficulties that many cannot imagine, who navigate daily obstacles in a world that others take for granted. These conversations have revealed people whose extraordinary resilience, creativity, and determination have not only carried them through their personal challenges, but have opened doors for others. People who have turned hardship and difference into opportunity. We've also heard the inspiring stories of the many people in our community who support them. Teachers who create new ways to learn, doctors and scientists who develop new therapies and technologies. Advocates who insist on accessibility within all public spaces. Leaders who ensure that Nashville's cultural and civic life welcomes everyone. These conversations are about community. They reflect the remarkable range of talent, compassion, dedication, and collaboration at work every single day across our region. At Vanderbilt, we are proud to contribute to this work, from research, innovation, and clinical care at Vanderbilt University Medical Center to institutions like the Vanderbilt Kennedy Center and the Roberts Academy and Dyslexia Center, guided by a commitment that all members of our community should be able to realize their full potential. Together, with our partners throughout Nashville, we are committed to these efforts and to the conversations that help them grow. All of you here tonight are part of this work. Thank you for joining us, and please enjoy the program.
So I'd like to introduce a couple of guests in our audience who have joined us. Anne-Marie Tharp, please stand and raise your hand. Anne-Marie's professor and Vicki Thomas Flood Endowed Chair in Hearing and Speech Sciences in the Department of Hearing and Speech Sciences. She stepped down as the chair, but is still very much involved in teaching and research and clinical care, and has been an enormous resource for me in our program as we put this together over the past year. So thank you, Anne-Marie. We also have a newcomer, so to speak, but not so new, Jared Klotfelter. Jared is the director, he's actually the inaugural director of the Roberts Academy and the Dyslexia Center at Vanderbilt University. I thought it would be great to have him here. He's just preparing to open the doors of this new facility, and I'd love for him to share just a few comments. Jared.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Churchwell, and the organizers of the for having me. It's an honor to be here. As Dr. Churchwell said, I have the privilege of being the inaugural director of Roberts Academy at Vanderbilt University, and as somewhat of a new face in the community, grateful for the opportunity to share just a quick moment about who we are and kind of how we came to be. And so just a few years ago, approached Vanderbilt University gift.
There you go. There you go. There you go. Jared. There you go.
Open a school for students with dyslexia, an elementary school. And so last year we opened our doors as an elementary school. We welcomed our first cohort of 3rd and 4th graders in a temporary space on the Vanderbilt campus. Those 3rd and 4th graders moved up to 4th and 5th grade this year. But we are really excited to be opening up a brand new space next year. So if you've been down Edge Hill or 18th Avenue or in the Music Row area lately, you've probably seen our new construction. It is a 60,000 square foot purpose-built space for our academy. And under the same roof as the academy will be the Roberts Dyslexia Research and Outreach Center. So we're really excited about this amazing opportunity to bridge the gap between research and practice that often exists, and to be able to learn as practitioners from the researchers right next door who are doing cutting-edge research and pushing the limits of what we know about dyslexia and how we can best educate dyslexic students. And we, on the academy side, can help inform and give that feedback directly to the researchers. It's a really special opportunity. And so while I know we may not be directly working with individuals with communication disorders or hearing impairments on a daily basis, I think there's a lot of overlap in the work that we do. And I hope that our mission, one that is to empower young people with disabilities to fulfill their potential, and to do so by not only targeting their deficits and their areas of need, but also celebrating and nurturing their strengths and their talents, is one that resonates with all of you. And so again, I'm grateful to be here, looking forward to learning alongside all of you tonight.
Thank you. Thank you, Jared. Appreciate that. We'll move on with our program. I'd like to introduce, our program is kind of on, you have a copy of it, and we're like in church. You follow the program and you'll be right on, we'll be spot on. But I do want to introduce some people on the stage here that you'll be meeting later. We have our community leaders, and when I mention your name, please raise your hand. We have Cynthia Monahan, who you met earlier, Equal Access Manager, Nashville Talking Library and Library Services for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, Nashville Public Library. Cynthia. There you go. There she is. Then we have Steve Ward, who's Park Manager in Radnor Lake State Park and State Natural Area Ranger. There you go. Thanks, Steve. Shirley Whitlow, former librarian at Tennessee State University and elementary school teacher in the Metro Public School System. There she is. You're getting a loud yell here, Shirley. We have Pamela Groom, former high school teacher at the Metropolitan Nashville Public Schools and Williamson County Schools. Pamela. We have Tony Deca Umpai, who's with us. He's an associate architect and treasurer of the Nashville chapter of Hearing Loss Association of America. Tony. There you go. And lastly, Chris Spence, Master Sergeant, retired U.S. Army Special Forces. That's Chris. We'll move to the program now where we have comments from our community historians, beginning with Dominique Harrington, Operations Manager of Pi Beta Phi Rehabilitation Institute of Vanderbilt Bill Wilkinson Center. She will offer a personal perspective, 30 plus years at least, right? Perspective on the history of services and support for our communities with communication impaired communities. So Dominique, please come forward.
All
right, thank you, Dr. Churchwell, and thank you and to Rebecca Price for coordinating the Then and Now series and the countless hours you and your staff have put in for these series. This evening, I'd like to share with you how disruptive an acquired language disorder known as aphasia can be not for only the person, but also for the families and the friends of those individuals. But first, you may be saying to yourself, what is aphasia? That's a funny word. If you could for a moment visualize me spelling this word, A-P-H-A-S-I-A, aphasia. Some of you may know what it is or have seen or heard the word before. However, 33% of the population have never heard the term aphasia. Yet, there are over 2 million living with aphasia in the US. Thank you for that piece of information that you repeated. All right, 180,000 people are diagnosed with aphasia each year. There are several types of aphasia. Aphasia can range from mild to severe and may impact one or several aspects of communication. It is a frustrating impairment, as people with aphasia still know what they want to say. Tonight, we will hear a personal story from a person who has aphasia due to having a stroke, a sudden onset, and we will hear from a family member whose spouse was diagnosed with primary progressive aphasia, a gradual decline of language. Before that, let's imagine waking up one morning and finding yourself in a hospital. You desperately want to find out what has happened to you, but the words you speak, even the simple ones, don't make sense. You can think, but you can't understand what people are saying to you. And writing, it won't help, because your writing is much like your speech. It doesn't make sense. What would you do? How would you feel? Scared, alone, frustrated? Aphasia is a disruption in communication, a neurological disorder caused by the damage to portions of the brain responsible for language production and processing. The language disruption, aphasia, affects speaking, understanding the spoken word, reading, writing, gestures, as well as numbers. Aphasia does not impact intelligence. The most common cause of aphasia is stroke. As we know, stroke occurs when the blood flow to the brain is blocked or reduced, depriving brain cells of oxygen. Approximately 1/3 of people who have strokes have aphasia. Then there are the primary progressive aphasia, or PPA, a condition that gradually affects the person's ability to use and understand language. This is different from aphasia that's caused by a stroke or an injury. With PPA, there's a gradual loss of function within the brain cells in the language area of the brain. We know that communication is the core of our ability to maintain relationships. Our identity is a composite of our roles, our values, and our beliefs. And we've acquired and maintained those over time, and especially through social interactions. Individuals with aphasia experience an identity crisis. Imagine not being able to give and take information as you once did, to share your viewpoints as you once did. Everyday moments like going to the grocery store, going to your doctor, or even participating in family functions can feel overwhelming without the right support. Aphasia disrupts one's ability to make social connections and friendships. These connections are essential to our human activities, and without connections, you can experience loneliness. Aphasia makes it difficult to take part in home and community activities. These changes cause an emotional distress and depression. With the loss of language, an individual isn't able to project a public image of who they are. All these consequences contribute to social isolation. How frustrating this impairment for individuals, because they know what they want to say and they can make their own decisions. Many individuals with aphasia participate in speech-language therapy. Speech therapy sessions traditionally take an impairment-based approach, focusing on the deficits and how to improve in those language domains. The frequency of therapy sessions varies, as does the length and duration of the treatment. What we do know is that when therapy comes to an end, the individual with aphasia still has aphasia. They may have made significant progress. They're able to use strategies to help with their communication, but they still have difficulty with some aspects of communication. Other individuals may be unable to express their needs or wishes, and they have alternative communication systems to help, but they still need the support of others as well. So the challenging question is now the one: we have finished therapy. Aphasia is still there. Now what? What's next? In the latter part of the 1990s, support groups were emerging, and Nashville was the hub for the Brain Injury Association of Tennessee and was under great guidance and leadership to grow and expand services for the traumatic brain injured individuals. There was a monthly support group for stroke survivors hosted at one of our local rehabilitation hospitals. But there wasn't a group or a community for individuals with aphasia. In fact, there were only a handful of programs across the country specifically for individuals with aphasia. So in the fall of 2003, a small group of 7 Vanderbilt speech pathologists, faculty, and researchers recognized the need for a Nashville-based community communication group that met on a weekly basis. That's a mouthful. All right, this group included me, 2 other speech pathologists, Christina Stevens and Karen Sarton, the then director of Pi Beta Phi, Patsy Allen, 2 clinical faculty, Dr. Leanne Golper and Dr. Wanda Webb, and Dr. Terry Wirtz, who was a clinical researcher. Dr. Wirtz was a leader in aphasia research and publications. The primary plan was to propose weekly meetings or sessions focusing on a supportive communication environment so individuals with aphasia could continue working on their communication and strategies. Number 2, the opportunity for people with aphasia to meet other people with aphasia, to establish new social connections and hopes of reducing loneliness and isolation. Number 3, providing groundwork for building a community and a sense of belonging. Being part of a community provides a sense of purpose. Number 4, providing opportunities to educate loved ones and caregivers. Number 5, to provide clinical training for master-level graduate students in the field of speech-language pathology at Vanderbilt School of Medicine. Then in February 2004, the aphasia group began. A year later, we were housed within the Pi Beta Phi Rehabilitation Institute at Vanderbilt Bill Wilkerson Center. At that time, we had just moved into a new building, so the timing was perfect. The aphasia group serves individuals across a span of urban and rural areas. Some travel up to 80 miles to attend the group. The group not only provides individuals with aphasia a steadfast, supportive community, but they also places them in the role of the mentor to aspiring clinicians, thus creating a synergistic relationship between patient empowerment and student education. The key element of aphasia group is the training it offers to graduate student clinicians. At the beginning of each semester, students are formally trained to be communication partners. They're taught how to work with individuals with aphasia toward a shared goal of revealing the communicator's competence and actually arriving at mutual understandings. Throughout the semester, these graduate students gain clinical experience as well as clinical hours to fulfill graduation and licensure requirements. This serves as a mutual benefit for the students and the group members. Students gain the opportunity to work firsthand with individuals with aphasia, something that many budding speech-language pathologists really don't have experience with, while group members gain the opportunity to mentor a student clinician and teach them how to treat individuals with aphasia as equal partners in communication. You might be wondering what a group day, how it works, and what we try to do, how we try to achieve, or what we try to achieve. The group day is typically a 6 to 6.5 hour day. Our sessions focus on individual work, small group work, large group work, verbal expression, talking, socializing, working on listening and understanding, participating in reading groups, book clubs. A shout out to Ruth Hemphill with the Nashville Talking Library and Library Services, who has supported our reading program since the start. Working on writing, technology, news groups, current events, always trying to learn something new. There is also the Aphasia Music and Art program. We offer art groups. We have the Aphasia Beats Choir. We have holiday plays and a vinyl club. As this week marks the completion of the 22nd year of Aphasia Group, there is much to celebrate. Years of providing a service to the Nashville community and helping people with aphasia maximize re-engagement in life and foster functional communication. Years of training more than 500 future speech-language pathologists and having successfully provide an infrastructure and a design for numerous aphasia group programs around the nation. All of this is made possible by the Department of Hearing and Speech Sciences, the Speech Pathology Graduate Program, and past and present staff of Pi Beta Phi Rehabilitation. And of course, most importantly, all the wonderful people who trust in us to help them in their recovery journey.
Excellent, Dominique. Thank you for sharing that very rich history. We find that this forum allows us to do a couple of things along with the educational part that you're getting here, but it also allows us to have people from all walks of life in Nashville, all neighborhoods, to interact here, to network, and to, as we hear of each other's challenges, successes, resilience, training opportunities, and the like, we begin to understand that we're more alike than we're different. Every group has their own unique problems and challenges, and we all do, and we have to face and go through them. And so it's very, very helpful and useful, I found in my career, to have a sharing, a storytelling time, like what we're doing here today. Next, we're going to listen to Sandy Cohen. Sandy is originator of the Accessibility Services of the Nashville Public Library, and she has one unique similar thing that I have on my resume. I've been at it 45 years too. Sandy, how about that? She offers personal perspective on the history and services and support for our deaf and hard of hearing communities. Sandy.
Pretty cool. Okay, thank you.
I think, hang on one second, step out for a second.
Okay.
Over this ridge. Now, okay, got it.
I'll hold on. It's okay. We're good. Thanks so much. Well, I'm unable to speak about living with hearing loss or the status of library services to the deaf and hard of hearing community today. My personal experience of the history of these communities in Nashville spans from the mid-1970s, when I first started working in the field, until 2 years ago, when I retired from the library, although not from deaf community work. I'll start with a brief history of services in the Nashville community. In the late 1920s, Margaret Lane Washington, a hard-of-hearing young mother, can be credited with establishing the first and longest-lasting speech reading classes in Nashville, first through her home, then through Watkins Institute downtown, and in 1947 by working to establish the Nashville League for the Hard of Hearing. The League changed its primary focus from providing speech reading classes to people who were hard of hearing to providing ASL interpreting services to the deaf community in the late 1970s. The League has changed its name several times and today is known as Bridges for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. After college, with every intent to become a classroom teacher of the deaf, I detoured and worked at the League and interpreter referral service for the deaf for 3 years, starting in the mid-1970s, to help establish interpreting services and provide telephone relay services almost 15 years before the ADA was passed in 1990. This opportunity allowed me to become fluent in ASL. It also made me acutely aware of how misunderstood deafness and hearing loss was and continues to be among hearing people. A condensed history of the Library Services for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, which I'll now refer to as LSDHH. Around 1977, Lilias Burns, the Special Projects Director of the Nashville Public Library, wrote and received federal grant funds that were available to public libraries through the Tennessee State Library and Archives to establish the Library Service for the Deaf. She had used this same channel of funding several years prior to establish what is now known as the Nashville Talking Library. On August 16, 1978, the Library Service for the Deaf opened by broadcasting news, weather forecasts, and events in the deaf community via a TTY news service. This service ended in 2001 when LSDHH moved into the then new main library. By that time, most deaf people used video phones as their primary means of communication, and the internet was well established as a news resource. My journey at the Nashville Public Library and LSDHH began February 1st, 1979, with the charge to develop other programming that would be inclusive of the deaf community. I accepted the position because I thought the public library was the ideal place to educate the general community about all related aspects of hearing loss in an unbiased setting. Within 3 to 5 years, demand was enough to justify expanding the program statewide, and I had a hard time saying no to people who asked. Initially, my goals included creating programming that would bring deaf people into the library and creating collections that were educational, accessible, and responsive to the needs of the hearing, hard of hearing, deaf, and deaf communities and the professionals seeking to work with them. My first and greatest challenge was to provide library programming to the prelingually deaf community, a minority of people within the deaf and hard of hearing community whose primary language is ASL, a visual gestural language, and to whom English, a spoken and written language, is usually learned as a second language, a community of people the library had never served before, and a community of people that are not typically public library users. After all, at that time, the public library was primarily focused on providing print resources, and the English literacy level of this population was between the 3rd and 5th grade, functionally illiterate. Fast forward 40 years later, I had co-founded a deaf literacy initiative. At our first meeting, when questioning deaf participants, including people with PhDs, asking them if they enjoyed reading, not one person said that they do, especially as a leisure time activity. Today, cochlear implants have hopefully changed the dynamic for many young deaf children to access language, and I look forward to seeing studies on the literacy impacts cochlear implants have made on children who have had them. The lending and reference collection of materials grew slowly as the years passed. By the time I retired, it was the largest collection of its kind in the country that was available to the public. I view my journey as one of public service, helping children, students, young adults, parents, doctors, lawyers, senior citizens, hearing, hard of hearing, deaf, deafblind, people to connect to all types of resources. It often took long periods of time of listening to people before figuring out how the library could help them. Don't get me started on the stories that I could tell you. My journey included providing a multitude of programming to people of all ages. Our most successful program was hosting the History Through Deaf Eyes exhibit, the only library in the country to host this national exhibit in conjunction with Gallaudet University, including artifacts from local and state organizations such as Vanderbilt Bill Wilkerson Center and the Tennessee School for the Deaf. It overtook the lobby and second floor gallery areas of the main library for 6 weeks and was viewed by approximately 15,000 people. Very soon after I started working at the library, I was inundated with requests of where to find services. So I created a small booklet that morphed into a statewide directory of services, then later evolved into a national listing of services of and for people with hearing loss. Commonly asked questions included, where can I find an audiologist near me? Where can I take an ASL class? Where can I find an ASL interpreter? Are there any camps for deaf children? All of this and much more became available via the LSDHH website, which I also established because websites were virtually non-existent in the late 1970s. LSDHH became nationally and internationally known through the website and social media, with people coming in from across the country, and even 4 college grad students from South Korea who made a special trip to the US just to see LSDHH. I established an archive including materials about LSDHH and its programming, materials from deaf organizations such as the Tennessee Association of the Deaf and the local chapter of the National Fraternal Society of the Deaf. Some organizations are still in existence and some are not. To acquire these archives, I had to earn the trust of the deaf community members and agree to safeguard their history. It literally took decades. The archive also includes videos of older deaf people signing to document how ASL has evolved through the years, and extensive vertical files that document the evolution of services, laws, technology, and so forth used by people experiencing deafness, hearing loss, and deafblindness. LSDHH became a special library and archive within a library. My journey included the need to find funding to pay for all of the programming and initiatives that were identified. So I was fortunate to lobby and receive funding from the state legislature through twice. We also received funding through NPL's budgets by establishing a Friends of LSDHH account to accept donations and through innumerable grants. People frequently ask me How did I do all of this? There was no great master plan, and I didn't do all the work alone. Staff members of LSDHH through the years, NPL administrators, and the NPL Foundation staff were incredible partners. I took one day at a time. Not being a member of the deaf and hard of hearing community, I made it a priority to immerse myself in their activities and develop relationships to identify their needs and figure out what the library could do to help them based on those needs. It was as simple as that. Before working at the library, I had come to understand that effective communication was the disability arising from hearing loss. Being able to communicate with community members was and remains key to the program's success. It was about relationship building and trust building. I was guided by the same principles that I strive to live by every day of my life, that encompass my core values of honesty, integrity, and compassion, to recognize and value every person that I worked with. Oops. Whether they were a member of the public or a staff member, helping people was always my priority. In an untraditional manner, I'm so grateful to have been given the opportunity to develop a library program that has the potential to educate the Nashville community and beyond about deafness and hearing loss for years to come. Looking back after 45 years, the journey was personally fulfilling and hopefully equally beneficial to the people the Library Services for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing and Nashville Public Library was able to touch and serve during my tenure. Thank you.
I got this too. Oh, I don't need that. Let's see. No. Can we thank these two legends in their areas sharing their years of experience with us here? Thank you so much. That's actually part one of our program. Part two, we're moving into, we'll now listen to short bios, stories from community leaders who have lived the life or been connected to those different communities over the course of their lives. And they'll share with us some of the challenges, successes, failures, and also resilience building moments. And we're going to start with Cynthia Monahan. Cynthia, do you have a microphone there? There you go.
I did not realize I was going first. This is fabulous. Yay, thank you. All right. I just wanted to be able to say what an honor it is to be here today. And I love the concept of then and now. And I'm particularly honored to see Sandy here. And there's nothing that can follow. I can't even come close to filling her shoes. So at any rate, but with myself, I just wanted to be able to share that I was born hard of hearing. And then I later went deaf. I've been deaf over 30 years. And one of the key things that people will always say is you don't look or sound deaf. And I think part of it was because I was born hard of hearing. That gave me an opportunity to be able to kind of understand language. But what I had was a cookie bite loss. And what that means is all that mid-range was gone, and that's where communication is. So in third grade, they did a test at school. They called my parents and they said, we think something is wrong with your child's hearing, but then again, she's a straight A student, so we think something's wrong with the test. Later, they went ahead and they said, I got in trouble for not hearing something. My mom very politely said, we're going to an audiologist and you better have a hearing loss. Congratulations, went to the audiologist and guess what? I had the hearing loss. So later, whenever I hit middle school, I realized that my hearing was shifting again and I didn't understand what was going on. I went to a pediatrician and he asked a question with his hand over his mouth and I couldn't answer it. He put his hand down and I immediately knew what he asked and I was so proud and I said, brown. He was asking what color his eyes were. He told me, you're learning to lip read, now you've got to learn not to look at the mouth. but to look at the eyes. So then I went on to high school, went on to college. In college, that's whenever I was really bottoming out. And I was excited to go to Indiana University, which happened to have like 400 students in a classroom, professor walking back and forth. And needless to say, I was in a little bit of chaos and confusion. Everybody's scrambling and writing their notes down and learning, and I'm over in the corner totally oblivious to what's going on. I asked for support, and I was told that because I could sit face to face with the counselors that were there to help me, that I was just bored. I didn't have a hearing problem, I was just bored. Maybe I wanted to take some more classes. So needless to say, I came back to Nashville. I was able to go to Belmont. I was able to graduate, and I've worked basically all my life. I've worked since I was like 9 years old. I've been very excited about a lot of different opportunities, but whenever I transitioned to going deaf, I will say it was like starting all over again. When I had my hearing loss and I was able to understand certain things, if music was playing in a room, it would sound like mumbo jumbo, but I could ask what the song was. And if it was a song that I knew back from when I could hear a little better, then all of a sudden I could hear it plain as day. And over time, whenever I would ask that same question, the music didn't come. I couldn't hear it. I was disconnected from family, from friends. I started to get socially isolated. I had a fabulous audiologist that said, I would like for you to get a hearing dog. And I asked why, and she said, because that's going to reconnect you. I'm watching you slowly withdraw, and you like to be with people. You like to be engaged. And this is a way to do that. When I got my hearing dog, Hero LaRue, who passed away in 23, it opened a whole world. It bridged that gap. All of a sudden, people were looking at me. They were acknowledging me. They were saying, wow, you really have a hearing loss. Then in 2019, I got my first cochlear implant. And in 2023, I got my second. 2019 was right before what? COVID. So I was a lip reader prior to that. 22% hearing with both hearing aids, and whenever I got the cochlear implant, I went up to about 80%. Unfortunately, that first implant was a recall, so about 8 months after I was activated, I found out that it was a recall, so I waited to do the second one. I did eventually have to go back and do a reimplant with the first one. So without the cochlear implants, there is no sound at all. But whenever I have them on, I'm able to understand. It still is not the same, and a cochlear implant does not work for everyone. It is not something that works. It's not with a hearing aid, and sign language, and viewing a cochlear implant, whatever it is going to be different for everyone. But all I can say is that I've gone through a lot of ups and downs, and there's the then, and there's the now. And I think that I still firmly believe in the fact of being able, very humbled, to work with other people and being around in this group of individuals here, that I can understand that we all have the opportunity to go from disabled to enabled. And it's a real honor to be here, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Cynthia. Lou Alley was supposed to be here, but Lou has a medical issue. He could not come. He sends along his praise and support for the team on stage here. We'll move to Steve Ward. Steve.
Thank you for having me tonight. It is an honor to be here. And a couple things I would like to do. I've got to disclose to Sandy Cohen that when the league was formed near Vanderbilt University, remember that, Sandy? You made that possible, thank you. I was one of about 30 children of deaf adults that created havoc in downtown Nashville, unbeknownst to my parents every Saturday night. As our ritual, you remember, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here to this past and future connection and present day. It's really meaningful, so thank you for all of that, Sandy, and that work. But I have the honor of being here today. I don't represent the deaf community. I was born into a deaf world. My parents are deaf. And it took me about 25 years to realize there's this word called CODA. I didn't know what it meant for 25 or 30 years. believe it or not. There's been a great movie about it a few years ago that was well done. I watched it with my mother and my sister. But CODA, what does it mean? Child of a Deaf Adult. And I went, the first 20, 30 years of my life, I was in the United States Marine Corps, and somebody told me what that word meant. They kept calling me that, and I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then years later, I was working with West Tennessee School for the Deaf. I was a park ranger at Pinson Mound State Park in West Tennessee. And I was working with the West Tennessee School for the Deaf there. We were doing summer canoe floats for the summer camps, and Barbara Bone was the superintendent at that time. She was great. And, the thing I will say about the deaf community that have allowed me to be part of that as a CODA has been I've never met a deaf person or person that's had any type of hearing challenge that I didn't feel like they were my friend after 5 minutes. And that is the beautiful thing about the deaf community. You never meet a stranger. And I hope that in my role, I'm a state park ranger for 30 years this past November, and I hope that in that role, every day I go to work, that I bring that to the office of representing 7 million Tennesseans and creating universal access for everyone that comes to our state parks and state natural areas. So being a child of a deaf adult, I will tell you, it's a superhuman power. I can read what most of the people are thinking by watching their body language. I can see it, and I can't even explain it. I can't articulate it. I wish I could. If I could bottle it and sell it, we'd all be rich. But it is this honor to have been born into the deaf community. I was born in 1970. I'm 55. So as Sandy Muchwell explained much better than me, I was born before ASL was the universal language. And I need to thank our interpreters here tonight, because ASL is this beautiful language, and it's into itself. And it takes, our certified interpreters are masters of an art that are helping us connect. And we would never be able to do that. So thank you for those interpreting tonight. Both of you, you're great. Thank you very much. But so moving forward, there's a million life lessons I will tell you from being 10 years old, telling a Metro policeman who's writing my dad a speeding ticket, blowing cigar smoke in his face, that it doesn't matter how loud he talks, that my dad is not going to understand him any better. So as a child of a deaf adult, you're often, by default, put into a role to interpret for your parents. Now that's changed. We've come so far, Sandy. We've come so far in this whole journey. But a lot of deaf children fall into that role, or children of deaf adults fall into that role. So I think that's been a blessing. It's been an asset to me and provided a perspective that I will cherish forever. So a lot of those stories, a lot of people might not connect with. I have a sister that's 7 years older than me, so she was partly responsible for helping me learn how to speak and communicate. And I still think in sign first, I will tell you. And I think it's this. Me and Tony were talking earlier. I think in sign first. I try not to watch videos of myself. If I do, I will see myself doing these hand movements and partway signing. So it's just those little things that came from having the honor of being born into a deaf world. So I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. I will tell you that as a public servant and working for 7 million Tennesseans, Tennessee has made great strides, and I mean great strides. We have really great support right now. We have the Access 2030, which is led from the governor. We have made tremendous strides in serving our visitors with specific needs in Tennessee. And we want our state parks and state natural areas to lead the nation for everyone. and truly be universal access. And I had somebody ask me, they said, what's universal access mean? I hear that term, but really, what does it mean? It means when we all walk in a building, or we leave a building, or we go to a presentation, we all enter the same door, we all leave the same door, and we all have the same experience. And that's universal access. And that is our goal every day. So I hope as a public servant we're doing that. We hope that you want to come to our state parks and state natural areas. And I hope that, and I know for certain, the honor I've had of being a CODA, Child of Deaf Adults, has made me better at that throughout my life. So it's an honor to be here. It's an honor to be with this group that's here today. Everybody is awesome. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Next, we have Shirley Whitelow. I got it right that time, Shirley. She's going to share her story. Let's be sure the mic.
I'm Shirley Whitelow. I grew up in Mount Pleasant, Tennessee. I am the oldest of two girls. We were active in the Baptist church. I went to Clark Elementary and High School. In third grade, I became a Girl Scout and was active Scout until I graduated. In the fifth grade, I joined the band and played the clarinet. My music teacher, Mr. William Gale, encouraged me to learn to play the oboe. Then I graduated from Clark High School with a scholarship to attend Tennessee A&I State University. Mr. Gale was instrumental in helping me pursue my interest in music and in getting the scholarships. While at TSU, I learned to play the cello. I was part of the Nashville Junior Symphony. My major teacher was Mr. W.O. Smith. He played the viola in the Nashville Symphony. I completed my senior recital playing the cello, which was my major instrument at that time. I was the only string instrument musician in the program. If I wasn't playing music, I was working in the library. Music was my love, and the library was my money. By the time I graduated in 1970, I had grown to love working in the library. I applied for a job at Fisk University Library. Shortly after I started, I received a scholarship to George Peabody College to study library science, where I graduated with my master's degree. For the next 10 years, I worked at TSU as a librarian. As my family grew, I transitioned my career to the Nashville Metro Public Schools. I was a third grade teacher for 15 years, the latter part of those years teaching ELL, English Language Learner. Then I transitioned to first grade ELL for 5 years. In my 29th year of teaching, I was still going strong. I was generally in good health, and with the exception of some high blood pressure. I was active in my church choir and raising my grandchildren. I had not thought of retiring. Then one evening after work, I went home and I started feeling poorly. My son took me to the hospital. I don't remember much other than they told me I had a stroke. Several days later, they discharged me to a rehabilitation hospital. I couldn't talk. I couldn't walk. I had to help in feeding myself. After 2 weeks of physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapy, I was sent home. While I was very thankful for being alive, all I could think about was, I've had a stroke. What am I going to do now? What can I can't go back to work. What can I do now? All I could do was to lay in bed. My children had to help me do everything. I couldn't do anything. I was so dependent on them. Thankfully, my doctor sent me to Vanderbilt for more therapy. I continued with speech, occupational, and physical therapy. I relearned how to cook a meal. I relearned how to drive. And I joined the aphasia group. Through the group, I continued to work on my communication abilities and how to talk reasonably well. The book clubs helped me learn how to read again and understand the stories. I had to relearn how to tell to others what the stories were. Through the different group programs, I continued learning about what is happening in our community and in the news. I have the opportunity to participate in art classes, the aphasia group choir, and the holidays plays. My confidence and my communication continue to improve. I still have problems. I can't know what I want to say. I know what I want to say, but I can't say it. I know being a part of the aphasia group was my salvation. This was because it taught me how to live after having 2 strokes. It is a wonderful group.
Wow. Yeah, impressive. It speaks to a number of things, the testimony of resilience standing and sitting here, what it means to fight and to get off the floor and be committed to getting better. This is what you hear. And number 2, it's another great example that we were wrong in most of the 20th century about strokes being, the brain of an adult being not particularly plastic, but plasticity can occur even in adults that have a stroke. Another part of the brain can be re-engineered and reconnected, but it does take the work, the commitment of the rehab team as well as more so the patient. And so you're seeing a shining example of that here. Thank you. Next, we have Pamela Groom. Yeah, please. Please, come on up. I didn't get the notice on the polka dots, so I apologize. Yeah, you and Dominique there.
Thanks. I'm a teacher, and I can't talk sitting down. Right. I also wrote my story out because I was worried I'd get emotional, so I'm going to apologize in advance if I get a little teary. My name is Pamela Groom, and I have been a career high school teacher in French and English in Metro Nashville schools in Williamson County for the past 37 years, until this last year when I decided to take a year off and perhaps officially retire after losing my husband, himself a lifelong English educator and consultant for Metro schools for 40 years. My husband of 32 years, R.W. Groom, was one of those extraordinary high school teachers who was often recognized, stopped in a mall, restaurant, personally messaged on Facebook by former students who wanted to thank him for giving them a voice, for teaching them to reason, to examine the printed word, why grammar matters, or to marvel at the feelings evoked by a proper metaphor, to understand what Shakespeare, Steinbeck, or Robert Frost was saying about the human condition, to imagine and to themselves create, write, ponder, and dream. Everyone has a voice, everyone has something to say. R.W., a 6'4", skinny, curly-haired, blonde, blue-eyed, gentle soul, was also a songwriter, a Beatles-loving guitar player, tennis player, fisherman, photographer, world traveler with an easy smile who loved his family. his son and daughter, his dogs, and me with his whole heart. In 2019, just before COVID, RW was in a new position in Metro as a reading language coach, this time with elementary age students that he exuberantly loved. Our story at that point is both one of a gradual degenerative disease as well as some sudden onset. In September of 2019, he started to have word retrieval issues that seemed to appear overnight. I vividly remember being in a small group marriage class at church and going around a circle to share about our spouses when he looked at me, tried to say a few things, and nervously said, I just love her, and squeezed my hand. That became our starting point for my reading his cues and helping him in social settings. The next morning, I asked him what he had for breakfast, and he said, oh, you know, the round thing with the raisins. I said, English muffin? He had forgotten this ordinary word, and it was at that moment that we made an appointment with our internist who ordered an MRI in case he had had a stroke. The MRI was completely normal, which, as odd as this sounds, I was hoping they'd find something. I wanted to find a reason. COVID shut down the world, so until the summer of 2020, it took that long to get into a neurologist who had him count backwards in sevens, which was hard for me to do. Hold mental math problems in his head, walk to examine his gait for Parkinson's, and read aloud the Gettysburg Address. The math was difficult for him, but he read aloud flawlessly with inflection and drama as if to awaken a bored teenager in his class. There was no diagnosis, but we were told that the brain is the one area where medical research is lacking. This neurologist said curtly that we would not really know anything until autopsy about what was going on. And I remember my eyes filling with tears, peering atop my light blue paper COVID face mask. He mentioned primary progressive aphasia, aphasia being the speech loss, and progressive meaning it would worsen. But said only time would tell what he really had. Our internist ordered regular speech therapy, and once COVID allowed, RW felt encouraged with these sessions as we coached, practiced, did workbooks, and tried to reinsert lost words on our own. I remember hiking at Radnor Lake, and he forgot the word algae in the pond, so that on our next hike, I'd ask him, and he would remember. We worked so hard to just stay level, trying to keep what he had. We did neuropsych evaluations, cognitive testing, some of which made him teary because he told me they were tests like the ACT prep he had coached his students to do, and now they were a challenge to him. COVID proved to be bad timing for this disease due to isolation, so we spent 2 years doing most of it at home, even sought out Mayo Clinic, were rejected for research studies due to PPA being so rare. It affects about 200,000 people a year, so when they would interview us for a research study, they wanted stroke-induced aphasia, and PPA isn't common enough. January of 2022, after a year's wait, we got into a new neurologist at Vanderbilt and a speech therapy appointment at Bill Wilkerson Center. It was Zach, our beloved speech pathologist, who did extensive testing, studied his word gaps, and determined that he most likely had logopenic primary progressive aphasia, which is word loss that carries the pathology of an atypical Alzheimer's disease affecting language, not memory. His new attentive neurologist, whom we loved, Dr. Acosta, thought he may have semantic variant, which was meaning loss, but we believed his understanding was intact. We did another scan, a lumbar puncture, and determined evidence of disease on the left side of his brain. I cannot say enough about what the Vanderbilt Network did for us. Try not to cry. What I really hope to share today, besides the education piece, is that this was highly emotional, and Dominique alluded to that, because RW understood everything. He knew he was lacking. It was heartbreaking. He once said that he was so stupid, and I said he was not. He just had a brain disease. Zach, the speech pathologist, made a notebook of family pictures, friends, places, photos, for instance, of where he liked to eat, go, so that he would have them to point to in the future when the time came when he could not name them. They made a laminated card to show people that he had PPA and that he could understand them, but that he had word retrieval difficulty. People often said, "Oh, like Bruce Willis," and that helped. I cried many a tear in the speech pathologist's office because we were now making guides and aids for when he got worse, not coaching him anymore to get better as I had initially thought. Suddenly, speech therapy was different and it lost its hope. We recorded his voice on computer programs and had computer lessons on his iPad, but the disease that hit his left side of his brain made it difficult where he couldn't push the right buttons on the computer. He couldn't use a cell phone anymore. He couldn't unlock a door or use a microwave. All the mechanical cause-effect things were leaving him. I had to do that for him. I was teaching high school and felt like I needed to race home to help him. It was very tiring, but I'm so thankful that I was able to do it. After 6 months of speech therapy, he was released. Due to the progressive nature of the disease, there was nothing more for Zach to do, so he suggested a weekly aphasia group led by Dominique Harrington on the same floor at Vanderbilt. It was all we had. We went weekly on Thursdays for nearly 2.5 years, and I wondered if anyone else had a progressive disease. Many in the group were recovering from a stroke, were improving. I remember being afraid that if he got too severe, they would kick him out. Well, they didn't. They patiently worked with him, paired him up with a partner, a grad student like beautiful Grace, who's here, had people scribe answers, studied music, art, current events, did a book study, and he was able to spend a day on his own communicating without feeling embarrassed or pressured. You feel so hopeless that there is no medicine, nothing else that can be done, but they encouraged us weekly. You are isolated socially. You can't enjoy a couple friends going out to eat the way you did. He couldn't go to, for instance, a wedding reception, places where you might chat with a stranger. By 2024, year 5 of the disease, we continued to see our internist and neurologist. There were times I questioned why, since they couldn't cure him, but they were able to order some home PT, OT, even a lady to help with baths for a couple of months, medicine as needed, and were a great support. At this point, he was not driving, needed someone to watch him at home while I was at work, could walk okay, but would have trouble sitting still, needed assistance with daily hygiene, self-care, and some meds to sleep. He started to have some falls by the autumn of 2024 and bouts with UTIs, incontinence that I learned quickly and have advised others those can be very serious. He never, however, forgot a memory. I would tell stories when I would tuck him in at night and talk about how wonderful our life was. He never lost his sweet spirit. He never forgot a song. He never didn't laugh at a joke. He always knew his way around. And one day earlier in that same year, he walked 5 miles home from aphasia group on his own because it was canceled and he couldn't call home. We were in a panic. My son raced to Vanderbilt from work, but RW had just already walked home like no big deal in his loafers carrying his lunch. I teased him that during the entire disease, he still backseat drove me and told me I was turning the wrong way in the car. 2024 was a hard year. It was hard on our family. It was hard financially, but I thankfully found a grant that I wanted to share, the Tennessee Commission on Age and Disability, that actually reimburses family members for care or provides day program funds. We interviewed for 50 Forward, which I would encourage people to do. I just found that out too late. But my lesson I learned to accept the help of others. Meal trains, church friends, neighbors brought love to our home. Some even took RW out to pubs. Our last aphasia group, not knowing it at the time, was November of 2024. I remember Dominique telling me, perhaps I looked discouraged that day. She said, you know, RW can still read. He chose correct answers on multiple choice tests. The lover of words who lost so many of his could still read. She breathed some hope into me that day. 2.5 months later, we would lose him on Valentine's Day, 2025, due to his weakness of swallowing, thereby giving himself pneumonia. We, by God's grace, had transferred him to NHC The Trace in Bellevue for a month of rehab after being at St. Thomas Hospital. I wanted to share, though, we had amazing nurses, PT, OT, speech therapy, nutrition care there. They never gave up. Such tender, attentive people. There are so many good people in the world, many of whom are in this room. I have learned that your health journey is not a statistic. RW did not follow set patterns in his 6-year battle with primary progressive aphasia. Everyone is unique. He stayed sweet and kind and always knew us. He lit up when loved ones entered the room and was able to say, I love you, almost to his last day. Maya Angelou said that people will never forget what you said, or excuse me, people will forget what you said. They will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. I will never forget the people at Vanderbilt and others who gave us hope, made one day at a time better, made him feel he can do it, to keep trying, and that he mattered. He was so loved. After all, isn't that why we are here? To love and support each other. Thanks.
Thank you, Pamela. Wow. Tony, can you share your story? Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, I want to thank Andre and Sandy for having me here, and to the rest of the staff for doing all this work. Thank you. For all the artists being here, listening to my story, thank you for being here. So basically, my name is Tony Dejan Pai, and some people don't know I was born hearing, and then at the age of 6 years old, I started losing my hearing, and the doctor said that it had something to do with an autoimmune inner ear disease. So at the age of 6 years old, I started wearing hearing aids, and my parents, my mom, my dad, and they wanted to, take me to a mainstream, school, be raised with all my hearing counterparts, hearing school. And I think that was one of the greater challenges of being in mainstream society, is that you're hard of hearing, you try to understand what people are saying, and then, you're not going to fully grasp on the whole concept. So I pretty much struggled, and was pretty much bullied at that time, and it was heartbreaking. But you learn to stand up for yourself. You learn to, push yourself forward and not let it bother you. So in a way, that kind of hurt your confidence. So after that, after elementary school, middle school, then graduated high school, it was pretty tough because I graduated high school in 1999, and then didn't have those kind of accommodations like CART or technology, speech-to-text apps. And so I had a note taker, help me, pass my classes. So that was pretty much a struggle, and I pretty much passed with the COB, so that was okay. So after high school, I went to college, University of Tennessee. So I graduated in architecture. And at that time, they did have a transcriber, so I'm very thankful They had transcribing there so I can understand what the professors are saying. So that was pretty much helpful. So I graduated in architecture and graduated in 2007. And then I would say from 2007, 2009, I worked for a firm about 2 years. And I think one of the challenges I have right now is navigating through the working world. And, you have this kind of fear that you don't know if you will be discriminated and it's going to be treated equally, or how you're going to be treated in the workplace. And that was some of the greatest challenges I went through. But in order to overcome it, you have to be honest, you have to be straightforward, and you have to tell your coworkers, hey, this is what I can do, and I need help with this. So it's always good to be very open-minded about what you can or cannot do. But it doesn't mean you're very limited to, just because you have a hearing disability, it doesn't mean you can't do anything. So part of that challenge was telling these coworkers, and I would say most were very respectful, some were understanding, but some were not so nice. And part of that challenge is realizing not everyone will understand you. Not everybody will treat you in a way that you want them to treat you. And sometimes you will find that kind of respect doesn't always exist with everyone, but I would say the majority of them, they were pretty nice. So I'm thankful for that, and I'm thankful for the opportunities I've grown into this kind of profession. And I've been in architecture for pretty much 15, 16, 17 years of my life, and I still have my challenges, but so far, so good. It's you're confident in what you do. Okay, that's great. Just tell people what you can and cannot do, but then, just be confident about it. And other than my work experience, I have joined HLA Nashville. HLA stands for Hearing Loss Association of America, the Nashville chapter, and have met a lot of great people there along the way. And the reason I joined that chapter from 2014 was because I really want to understand what other people are going through, their lives, their marriage, their relationship, how they're dealing with the workplace and all of that. And I met some great people. I met Brenda, I met Vicki, I met Chris, and I mostly met Sandy. And Sandy's been really helpful in my journey and, not being so lonely and, meeting people like myself. And all these people have been, they've been great friends, they've been really wonderful. And I always say that I'm thankful for my mom, my dad, and for teaching me to speak at least, for giving me the opportunity to grow, and for challenging me in this situation. So I'm thankful for that. And then one thing I want to say is, one common misconception about being hard of hearing is that not all of us know sign language. So that's something I'm learning too. But I'm not perfect in that. And I'm trying to read lip read, and that's how I'm getting by with most people. And other than that, I'm still growing. I'm 45 years old, halfway dead. Still there, still alive. Other than that, I want to thank everyone for having me here. And thank you for listening to my story. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Appreciate that very much. We're going to end with Chris Spence.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending. And Doctor, thank you for having me. Stuttering. Roughly 66,000 people in Tennessee stutter, including myself, and as a few minutes ago, I learned that you stutter too. So you got two stutters out of the 66,000 in Tennessee. This is my story as a stutterer and how I refused to let it define what I could and couldn't do in my life. I never saw stuttering as a disability. I saw it more as a unique trait or an accent, like in the South with a drawl, or in New England where you are missing your R's. My accent was repeating myself, not the whole sentence, just certain words. I began stuttering at 3. like a lot of us seem to have found our problem starting at 3 years old here. And speech therapy was started soon later. This was in the mid-'70s, and it included speaking, talking, and stuttering mitigation techniques that they had at the time. And this was done every week, and those techniques were included were thinking before you speak, get your thought process started. Second, begin exhaling before you speak. This ensures a smooth flow of air, which prevents stuttering. The only side effect of this is that you speak in the most boring, monotone, emotionless tone you could ever hear. It was clear to me at that moment that I needed to find my own way of communicating. Benefits of stuttering. I only found 2 useful ones. I developed an exceptionally large vocabulary of substitute words, which reduced my trigger words, like hello. When you are stuck on a word, everyone naturally finishes your sentences, especially when you're reading aloud in grade school. I joined the military at 18, and the Army thought it made sense to have someone who stutters talk on the radio. The funny thing is I rarely stuttered because I had to speak in pre-memorized phases and words. It was actually fantastic speech therapy for me because it got me to rehearse without stuttering. It got so bad to a point where one of my commanders put a handset in my hand whenever I walked around, and when I spoke, I had to put the handset up, and I'd quit stuttering. In 1995, I was assigned to the 5th Special Forces Group of Fort Campbell, Kentucky. And I began my journey as a Green Beret communications sergeant. So I guess they thought I was doing a pretty good job as a communicator. I continued to manage my stuttering as it ebbed and flowed depending on my environment, never allowing stuttering to hinder any task assigned or to support. During the invasion of Afghanistan, which I was part of, I took what I thought was a very simple picture of American forces on horseback. But that picture soon took on a life of its own. Later that week, Donald Rumsfeld, then the Secretary of Defense, held that photo up during a briefing at the Pentagon showing America's response in Afghanistan. That simple picture is now displayed in the Smithsonian Institute and helped inspire an artisan from Kentucky to create the horse soldier statue, which now overlooks the reflective pools at Ground Zero. It also motivated the author Doug Stanton to write the book 12 Strong, based off our personal interviews of our experience in Afghanistan, which then led to Jerry Bruckheimer to produce the movie called 12 Strong, from one single photo. A photo that we never would have seen if I had let stuttering define what I could accomplish. For as of now, I currently work for a small company and all of the other things in sales and customer service and product development. In my free time, I'm the program director for a charity foundation called the Special Forces Scholarship Fund, which provides merit-based scholarships to the children of members of the 5th Special Forces Group. We have awarded 796 scholarships, totaling $1.9 million in the past 13 years. And the majority of that fundraising is for me talking. And then lastly, over the past 3 years, I have a slideshow of the first pictures taken in Afghanistan, which I take to schools, other locations. I spoke at Collegedale a couple years ago and spoke to the student body, talking about our experience, freedom, and things like that. And a young lady in the audience asked, why is it important for you to come speak with us at schools like this and tell us your story? Which was a great question, and I didn't have a very good answer at the moment. But luckily, I had an epiphany, and I said, because you can't ask a book a question. So just like that, we are also books that can answer questions for people, and if we don't share our stories, they'll be lost in history other than in your archive. So that is my story, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I have to thank retired Officer Scott Brower, who is the head of the Bass Scholars Program at Vanderbilt, which takes Army veterans and gets them through Vandy and Peabody College. An amazing, amazing program. And he finds people like this man over here, which is phenomenal. Thank you. Well, we're at the closing of the program now. I want to thank everybody for coming. I want to thank everybody on the stage again. Let's give everybody a hand here, please. Our community historians, our community leaders. You can see the tremendous power of storytelling. How much have you learned just from listening to their stories? How many parallels in your own lives, though different, but parallels in your own lives have you heard and that you kind of feel in your own soul from the stories they've shared and the histories and the experiences that our historians have also shared. So that's the power, I think, of the Then and Now series, and we're looking forward to continue it in the next academic year. Thank you all for coming tonight. I want to thank my team, Rebecca Price. Where's Rebecca? And her team from the Special Projects and the, there she is over there, from the Public Library. I want to thank my buddy, Samara Lee, who's not here, who's dealing with some family issues from Vandy, as well as Marjorie Campos-Pons, who helps us with the art and the connection of art to storytelling. She's not here with her team today, but she's been a real supporter of ours. It's the Engine for Art, Democracy, and Justice team at Vandy. And lastly, I want to thank Marla Robertson. Marla, where are you? Where are you sitting? Without Marla, no program, no food. Better, worse, no food. And so thank you all for coming, and look forward to seeing you next year. Thank you very much. Thank you all.